me this incredible power because basically my entire career is about taking people's emotions and manipulating them in as few as words possible. So really I could sit you guys all down and in 25 minutes you could all be weeping and rocking. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that for Holly Black at the end. It seems more for speed. I decided to go more for like joy and inspiration, so we're gonna shoot for that. We'll see how it goes. Oh yeah. Okay, so what I really want to talk about is imagination and fear, because I was thinking about this, and it seems to me that really creative people seem to have both of these things in equal measure, because the same place that generates things that are awesome and wonderful is the exact same place that generates fear and terror. And I wanted to talk about that, especially because the other day someone told me that I was the most fearless person that they had ever met. Now, I'm not sure if that's really true. I'm trying to think of how I should start this story. I think you need some backstory. All right, so how many of you have read The Dream Thieves, my latest novel? Thanks. How many of you have read The Raven Boys? Okay, so the thing about The Dream Thieves is that it follows Ronan, and he is a boy who can take objects literally out of his dreams. And I think you need to know that before I start this story, and you need to know that he has a kind of sort of friend, sort of arch nemesis named Kavinsky. And he brings out the best and the worst in Ronan, and they're both dreadful street racers. I think that's all you need to know for this story, possibly. Yes, so once upon a time I was researching The Dream Thieves, and in order to do so, oh no, I forgot one thing. Kavinsky drives a Mitsubishi with a knife painted on the side. So for my research, I went to a Mitsubishi dealership, and I accidentally bought one. And it set forth this kind of terrible chain reaction of events that I was powerless to stop. So after I had bought this Mitsubishi, then I accidentally bought a race car. And then I accidentally raced in 3 national races. And then I accidentally on purpose gave the race car away, which left a race car-shaped hole in my heart, which I could only fill by buying 5 miniature silky fainting goats. I couldn't stop any of these things. They all happened. But this is not what the person was talking about me being the most fearless person, I think. I think the reason why she was talking about something else is because she told me this around the time period of my launch party for The Dream Thieves. So, my Mitsubishi, which I painted a knife on the side of, I decided that for my launch party I was going to drive it from Virginia to Kansas City. And I did that, it's 15 hours. And I drove there, and while I was signing, I parked it out front of the venue, and I told my readers that they could spray paint my car. And so I put down a tarp, and I gave them the spray paints, and then while I was signing, I was sitting there and knowing excruciatingly that they were working at my car in ways that I did not know. At one point, the bookseller came in and he said, "Is it okay if they use Sharpies on your car?" And I said, "Well, I guess there's no reason why they shouldn't." And he said, "Good, because they already have." And then as I was signing, people would come through the line and they would say things like, "I just painted an abstract dachshund on your car." And I'm thinking, I get to drive this 15 hours back home. But I had no idea really what was going on with the car. At the very end, I was signing, and this extremely large group of drunk people came in, and they had not been at the signing. They came barreling in, and one of them comes right up to me at the table and says, "You're a famous person? There's an even more famous person outside on the street." I'm going to change the names here and the identities to protect both the identities of the people involved and also your faith in the US government. However, he shouted that the person out on the street was in fact someone who was the deputy director of ... I'll leave the rest up to your imagination. And yeah, so he's standing there and he says, "How much will it take for us to get you to let her to paint Got Milk on your car?" And I said, "Buy a hardcover?" And they did. And when I came out, they had indeed painted Got Milk on the front and We Love Cows on the back. Now the license plate of this boy racer says thief, and so I've got to tell you that license plate turns even more sinister when spray painted above it is We Love Cows. Anyway, so I think this is what she was talking about as far as me being fearless. This concept that I let people spray paint my cars and then drive 15 hours back to St. Louis with a gang sign on the side, because there was a random hoodlum that had come along and he was so excited by seeing a car that was clearly getting spray painted and snuck in with everyone else, and he did paint a gang sign on the side, which later he slyly implied to me meant that I actually had drugs hidden in the left wheel well of the car. Thanks, I get to drive through downtown St. Louis. Anyway, so I think this is what she meant by you're fearless. But the thing is, I'm not really fearless. I have fears, it's just they aren't important, which makes me sound like a sociopath. But let me explain. I should explain by looking at this. See if I've gotten away from myself. No. Oh, and it says, here, Maggie, if you get lost, tell a story. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story that's kind of like Jiminy Cricket. This is like the story of Christmas past. I always wanted to be a writer. Once upon a time, I was a young and tender maggot, and I was typing away on my dad's word processor. Do you guys even remember what word processors are? Yeah, they're compact computers the size of this entire table. And so I was typing away at it, and my dad says, so Maggie, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, oh, I want to be a writer. And he said, oh, you want to be poor. Now, in his defense, I remember the novel I was working on at the time. It was about two dogs test driving a car. They were Scottish Terriers. It was a red Porsche. The first line of dialogue was, it like hugs the road. So maybe not the stuff of National Book Award winning, possibly. Anyway, so yes, I always wanted to be a writer. I was always full of ideas. Now, how many of you in the crowd actually want to be writers? How many of you already are writers? Hey, I like the way that when you look at the authors and I say, how many of you want to be writers? And like, not all of your hands were up. I'm taking down your names. All right, so the thing about being a writer is that I've been told this advice again and again, that as a writer you play the what if game. That every single story comes from asking the question, what if? What if mankind could bring dinosaurs back? What if the president's daughter got kidnapped? What if killer water horses emerged from the sea and we decided to have races on them every single October and sometimes people die, but it was so fun and there were November cakes? Things like this. And they tell you as a writer that you should play the what if game. As a child, I did not have to play the what if game. I lived the what if game. And the thing about the what if game is that it doesn't get rid of all possibilities. All possibilities in what if. There's both negative and positive. And the thing is, as a creative person, if you can imagine all possibilities, the dreadful ones are also equally as important as the magical ones. And so I remember as a child, for instance, I was very, very fearful. I remember learning that the migration of killer bees was coming up through Texas, and by 2015, the population in Virginia would be such that we were all going to be stung to death in our beds while our parents watched helplessly. And I am not exaggerating when I tell you I spent an entire night crying and rocking in my bed, imagining this anaphylactic death. Here's another story of my fearfulness. All right, so one day I came downstairs and my parents were watching a movie. I did not catch much. It did not take much. It was this: a submarine, divers, and a deep sea creature that turned the inside of the divers into a clear and colorless jelly. I couldn't get into a bathtub for weeks. Or when I was super, super small, my parents used to always take me to the library every single week. And when we lived in Williamsburg, Virginia, there was an amazing library there. A huge children's section. Fiction on one side, non-fiction on the other. And every single week, my mom would bring me and she would drop us off and return when I had a giant stack of books. And all was well and good. My mind was being molded. On this particular week, the book that I picked up was called Plant People. I know it's an evocative title. If I could come up with titles like that, I wouldn't actually have to spend so much time on internet word search engines looking for words in the English language that end with ER that are not incredibly inappropriate for books in the Shiver series. Imagine my pain, please. Shiver, linger, Bieber. I could just go with wolf people and be done with it. Anyway, so Plant People. The deal with Plant People was this. It was set in a small western town. Fog came rolling in and turned everyone, except for the narrator, into a plant. And I mean, that was fine. I wouldn't really be influenced by something like this because even though I was fearful, I was also logical, and surely if people were going all eucalyptic west of the Mississippi, it would have been in the news, that's fine. But Plant People had photographs, black and white photographs of the town and the mist, and the photograph that will stick with me for the rest of my life, a close-up of the narrator's mother's hands as she's making dinner. And it's so close that you can see the veins in her hands. Only they're not veins like you and I have veins. Oh no, these are veins like in a plant leaf, pumping chlorophyll through her body, turning her into a plant. And the worst part about the Plant People, I couldn't remember if I'd gotten it from the fiction section or the non-fiction section. So I could have asked the librarians, who did love me, if it was fiction or non-fiction, but it was really much more straightforward to spend the entirety of the year being paranoid every single time the fog came rolling back in and go running inside and shout, "Mom, show me your hands!" She pulled through, thank you for asking. Actually, I told a librarian about this. When I was at the Williamsburg Public Library, I was like, this is the place where it all started. This is where I almost died. My mother almost turned into a plant because of you. And so later, I got a package from them thanking me for coming there, and I'm like, wow, this is fatter than a letter, and I open it up, and what slides out but a copy, vintage copy, of Dale Carlson's The Plant People. And I looked at it, and I'm like, open it, Maggie, open it, open it, you're an adult, open it, come on. And I was like, it's fine, it's fine. And I opened it up, and then my first thought was, oh my God! Immediately followed by, publishes this for children? Still pretty terrible. All right, what's my point here? Oh, yes. It says, tell another story. No, that's not true. That is totally not true. I see here that it just says, talk about emotional scarring. Oh, it also says here, my point was, I was very small. I must have skipped this part of the speech. I spent most of my life being about that tall. That must be where I was supposed to be like that. And it says, learn from my mistakes, eat your vegetables. I told you, an inspiring speech, right? Okay, also it says, anyway, I was scared shitless. Okay, that's